Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app, O'Connor and Company.
It's a great President's Day all around. I left off with was I celebrating Tyler? I think John Tyler. I'm
yes,
moving
I
on
think
to
Tyler
Pierce.
was the last one.
Yeah, I'm going on.
I
It's
vaguely remember
Pierce. It's time to
Pierce.
celebrate Pierce. Yeah.
Oh. I'm going to have to go figure out what he did as president. That was notable.
That's what we get. We can't celebrate Washington or Lincoln anymore. It's got to be all the presidents. So happy President Pierce Day, everybody, at 7:07 O'Connor and Company. Coming up at 7:35 a.m. prior, America First Legal. 8:05, the Attorney General of Louisiana, Liz Murrill. And then at 8:35, General Jack Keane on the latest in Ukraine and Russia. It's Larry O'Connor alongside Patrice Onwuka. Happy President's Day, Patrice.
Happy President's Day to you too, Larry, and everybody listening.
Joe diGenova joins us now, legal analyst, former U.S. Attorney to the District of Columbia. He served in the Reagan administration. So is it fair to say that Reagan is your favorite president, Joe, or do you have another one?
Well, Reagan is my favorite president because he appointed me to be the United States Attorney for the District of Columbia. And Donald Trump is also my favorite president because he beat the system. And as far as I'm concerned, just two great guys making America better.
And have you been watching the legal wrangling over Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency, which is an agency under the umbrella of the Office of Management and Budget, and these judges who consistently try to stop the executive branch from doing what I thought was well within the confines of the executive branch? Are these playing out in such a way where these judges will be overruled, number one? But number two, is there ever any discipline to these judges who clearly make an unconstitutional argument? I don't understand how these judges continue to be able to do what they do for purely political purposes.
Well, first of all, these judges are being appealed, number one. And number two, these are very, very politically motivated judges. It's one of the horrible developments of this century that we have now politicized the district court judges in this country. And it's a very, very sad development because it strips the public of its trust in the judiciary when they appear to be partisan in the way they're doing this. And I say this as someone who's been a member of the bar for 55 years. And on February 22nd, I will be 80 years of age, and I have never seen a more political judiciary in my lifetime as a lawyer. It's very sad. And what's going to happen is President Trump has laid down a marker. He has accepted, and he's right, the unitary theory, the unitary executive theory of Article 2. That is that there is one president, one representative of the executive branch, and everybody else who works for him is his employee, and he can fire them at will. That's his position. That's what's on its way to the Supreme Court. And these judges don't like that. They don't like a president being strong because they reject that theory and they want to be able to hold a president in tow. They are wrong, in my opinion, and the president is right.
So, Joe, how many of these cases do you think are going to make it to the Supreme Court? I mean, at least we saw that, at least one or two of the cases in terms of what President Trump is doing, either to cut federal, to provide the buyout, for example, that was upheld by a federal court. And so I'm guessing that that's not going to be appealed any higher. But do you expect to see the Supreme Court weighing on all of these different cases, or are they going to try and put some kibosh on these cases and saying, listen, this is within the president's authority to do?
Well, if the Supreme Court is smart, which they are, that's their job, to be smart, they will take the first case that's coming their way, and that is the case involving the president firing the Office of Special Counsel Chief Hampton Dellinger, who was appointed by Joe Biden. He's the guy that, his job is to protect whistleblowers and to take complaints from civil servants. That case is on its way to the Supreme Court right now. If the court is smart, it will take it. It will uphold the firing by President Trump, and it will recognize the unitary executive theory of Article 2. We'll see. But if they lose on that and they get a bad ruling from the Supreme Court, and it's, by the way, it's very difficult to tell because you don't know what Roberts and Amy Coney Barrett are going to do. They've gotten cold feet in the last year. I know that Brett Kavanaugh is a great exponent of the unitary executive, and so is Gorsuch. And we know that Clarence Thomas is. So the question is, do they have enough votes? I think that they will win on the unitary executive theory. The court will uphold the firing of the chief of the Office of Special Counsel. And if they do that, that will get rid of most of the appeals that are coming up.
Okay.
And then, Joe, of course, the media plays their hand in this because they're on the side of the administrative state, the permanent political class in Washington, D.C. Here's a perfect example, Washington Post. You see this headline, Trump DOJ fires 20 Biden immigration judges. And you think, well, this is outrageous. First of all, this is an infringement on the judicial branch, right? It's like, oh, no, immigration judges are not part of the judicial branch, is my understanding, right? These are agency judges who adjudicate through the administrative state. But then you drill even further. They're calling this the midnight firings of these immigration judges. Guess when the 13 of these judges were hired? In late December and early January. Joe, they were just hired by the lame duck outgoing Biden administration. So this is just Trump coming in and saying, no, don't hire those people. We know what they're going to do.
Well, you're absolutely right, Larry. These are not judges. These are simply federal employees who are given the task of processing administrative appeals by people who've been denied access to the United States, various reasons. They have no right to these jobs. These are not tenured. They're not appointed they're not mentioned in the Constitution like federal judges are who serve life tenure for good behavior. These are simply federal employees recently appointed. They're, if nothing, on a probationary period, and they can be dismissed at will. So the objections to this are ludicrous, and the president will win on the firing of all of these so-called judges.
One other aspect of this, though, is you talk about the unitary theory of the executive branch and how it relates to firings. What about how it relates to spending? You know, you got people in Congress saying, we allocate money, we appropriate, you got to spend it. You're not allowed as president or as the Department of OMB to say, oh, well, we don't need all that money. We can do it more efficiently. Has this ever been? First of all, I don't think this has ever even been a conversation in Washington, D.C., because no one looks at it that way.
Well, let's assume that their argument is correct. Then that means that the President of the United States would not be able to authorize a criminal investigation of fraud in the Treasury. That anything that Congress says has to be spent, even if it's fraudulently spent. Now, of course, the Supreme Court is never going to accept that interpretation of the law. The issue is the 1974 Impoundment Act, which says that once Congress has appropriated money, the president cannot do what presidents have done since the beginning of time, and that's impound funds that the president doesn't want to spend for various policy reasons. I believe that the 1974 Impoundment Act is unconstitutional, and that issue is going to be joined by some of the cases that are making their way through the courts. So we shall see. I think the president wins on that one as well. I think the president does have discretion under Article 2 not to spend money if he believes that it's being spent unwisely or illegally.
All right, Joe diGenova, stay right there because everyone's hair is on fire over the Eric Adams, Southern District of New York story that seems to be the biggest scandal since Watergate, because everything's the biggest scandal since Watergate. So we'll get Joe diGenova's reasoned and logical opinion on that story coming up in just a moment.
WMAL, making sense of the news. Live from the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios. Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
We continue with Joe diGenova. Joe, it appears as though there was some deal reached with the mayor of New York City, Eric Adams, who both Donald Trump had voiced and various other commentators have voiced that Eric Adams had sort of been set up. He was investigated criminally by Biden's Justice Department because he was speaking out against Biden's open border policies. You know, the next thing you know, he's being investigated for corruption for taking first-class airline tickets many years ago, and some other aspects of this investigation that was being uncovered by the Southern District of New York, their office in Manhattan. Bottom line is the charges were dropped, and it appears as though, based on the language used here, that they were dropped so that Eric Adams can cooperate with the Trump administration in carrying out immigration policies and deportation policies. But if he doesn't cooperate, then the investigation is back on. First of all, just on the face of it, correct me if I characterize this incorrectly, please. Is that normal? And if it isn't normal, what's really going on here? And is it corrupt? As you saw the U.S. attorney resign, Daniel Sassoon resigned, and they're making a hero out of her.
Well, first of all, it is a normal exercise of prosecutorial discretion by the Deputy Attorney General, Mr. Bove. The fact is that the U.S. attorneys work for the Department of Justice. They may be individually nominated and confirmed by the Senate, but they can be fired for no reason whatsoever. They can be replaced. So let's get that out of the way right away. Now, was this a good reason? It's the reason that the Deputy Attorney General gave that the administration thought was important. Within the bounds of prosecutorial discretion, that is completely proper. And by the way, besides that, Mr. Bove, the Deputy Attorney General, a really, really bright lawyer and excellent litigator, said when he wrote back to Ms. Sassoon for her insubordination, he said this about the case. The case turns on factual and legal theories that are at best extremely aggressive. And he cited the case against Bob McDonnell, who was overly aggressively prosecuted by none other than Jack Smith and lost 9-0 in the United States Supreme Court. So I think Mr. Bove is on very sound legal and policy grounds. And while people may not like it, that's what the Justice Department is there for. It's to make decisions about whether or not cases should go forward. Now, make no doubt about it, the judge in New York, a Biden appointee recently on the bench, is going to hold hearings, demand answers, may even try to put the Deputy Attorney General on the witness stand. It doesn't matter. The judge can't order the prosecution of a case. Let's just play this out. Suppose the judge says, I'm not going to dismiss the case. And Mr. Bove and the Justice Department, that's fine, Your Honor. We're not going to prosecute it. What are you going to do? I'm going to order you to prosecute it. You can't do that, Your Honor. It's called separation of powers. This is a game with an ending that can only end one way. The Department of Justice wins.
You know, we're speaking with Joe diGenova. Similarly here, when Pam Bondi became AG, she kind of created this new weaponization working group. And I think that kind of flew under the radar. The New York Times is probably the only outlet to really cover it, but they're positioning it as just a way for President Trump to get retribution against, lawyers who came after him or special counsel like Jack Smith. And then this weekend we had Fox analyst Andy McCarthy, who's pretty well regarded, saying, no, this is actually a very bad thing, that this is really just the Trump administration weaponizing the DOJ the way that the Biden administration did. Do you give any credence to Andy McCarthy's argument, or where do you stand on the weaponization working group?
Look, I like Andy McCarthy. My wife, Victoria, and I have known Andy for years. Here's the problem. Andy, from the very beginning, thought that the Russia hoax was real. He believed James Comey because Andy is an institutionalist. He thought that James Comey was absolutely right, and the investigation of Donald Trump, started by Barack Obama on January the 5th, 2017, in the Oval Office as a counterintelligence investigation, he thought that was just fine. That's BS. That was corrupt, totally corrupt. And so Andy's just wrong about this. Having a weaponization task force inside the department makes eminent sense because since January of 2017, elements of the FBI, the Department of Justice, and states' attorneys general have been out to get Donald Trump for no reason at all. They have weaponized the criminal justice system against him. We cannot have that in a democracy. There needs to be accountability. People need to be publicly admonished. Their names need to be put in reports. And if necessary, they need to be prosecuted. Andy is absolutely wrong. That's the institutionalist in him coming out. He's just dead wrong. Does he really think that everything that happened to President Trump from January of 2017 was kosher? BS.
Finally, we're expecting the vote on Kash Patel at the end of this week, Joe. I believe it's Thursday. I believe it's Thursday that it's planned.
Yes.
Do you see anything standing in the way of Kash Patel being the new FBI director? And if so, If not, what do you expect from him as he hits the ground running?
Well, I expect him to be. First of all, I don't see anything. Who knows in this town? Any kind of bald-faced lie can come out at the last minute. But I expect him to be confirmed. I expect him to be confirmed, and I don't. And I expect him to go in. And a lot of the firing of the people that should be fired was already done by Emil Bove, the Deputy Attorney General. Remember, the entire 7th floor has been replaced. The temporary FBI director refused to turn over names. He was told, turn it over or you're going to be fired, about the January 6th people. I expect the acting FBI director, Driscoll, will be gone. And he won't even be in an assisting capacity. But he's going to continue to clean the house. He's going to bring in some people that he's known. He's probably been conferring with former FBI agents. And I'm sure Kash Patel, because of his excellent record, knows a lot of people inside the FBI that want to help him clean house, because the FBI is a disaster. It cannot continue as it is. God bless him for taking on this job. This is going to be one of the worst things that anybody's ever had to do to clean up this once great agency.
Joe, I hope you have a great birthday.
It's going to be my 80th, and I'm very excited. I feel like I'm 45.
Wow.
Amazing. You sound like you're 25. So
I'm 47. I feel like I'm 47.
47. There you go. Even better. Thank you, Joe. It's 7:23.
Thank you, sir.